Right, hello people. My name is Dan Capp, host of the Fyrgen, and some time ago, I think it was a couple of years ago, I hosted a roundtable with two esteemed gentlemen, and it was so popular, and well, it was famous and I guess infamous at the same time. And those gentlemen were Rob Miller, previously of Amebix fame and Tower Cross, and Rich Walker of Solstice and Sore Throat. Both good friends of mine, and we always have a great conversation with one another. So we decided to do another roundtable, and we're going to get into a variety of topics in this discussion. But just before we do, I wanted to just offer a little caveat at the beginning to say that the last roundtable we did, certain things that each of us said were ascribed to others in the chat, and I just wanted to say that although Rob, Rich, and myself have similar views on many things, we are not of one mind. We don't have the exact same ideas and thoughts. So something that one of us says is not necessarily the view of another, although often it can be. And we're just having a free discussion here. We're open-minded gentlemen. We're not saying what is, we're not saying what isn't. We're just speaking freely about things which concern us, things which we think are important, and things which we think people will find interesting to hear discussed. So, yeah, Rob and Rich, it's great to be talking with you both again. So how are you both doing? Rob, I'll start with you.
Oh, fine, thanks. Yeah, thanks for inviting me back as well. It's very kind of you. I've been in hair and makeup this morning and prepared myself diligently. It's nice to have those kind words as well, and to re-emphasize the caveat that you've put across there. I can quite freely say for myself, I have some fairly controversial opinions, ones that probably are shared or not shared by other people, but I don't give a toss really where that's concerned when people start throwing accusations at me, because I've been through that stuff, and I appreciate that these my fellows here are in a different arena than myself, and I respect their opinions and their right to express them. So there we go.
Yeah, indeed, yeah. And we're going to get into a bit of that. I mean, we're very aware that our detractors will be watching this, or listening to this, I should say. So not that we care, it doesn't bother us. We're not fazed by them. But at the same time, we want to make it very clear, because they will try to misrepresent anything that we say. But unlike them, we're open-minded guys, and we don't shy away from controversial opinions when we think that they're important. So, Rich, how are you doing, Rich?
Well, like Rob, I've been in hair and makeup, but even better, I've had my palms shaved this morning, so you know what I mean? Yeah. Hairy palms. No more hairy palms. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I've been reading Bram Stoker's Dracula actually, and just the bit in there about Jonathan Harker noticing the Count's hairy palms.
Curiously enough,
the Count was on his own for a long time, wasn't he?
Yeah. Curiously, a bit like Chaos from Chaos UK, but there you go.
Has he got hairy palms?
Yeah, very likely.
It's covered with some kind of strange moss, isn't it? There's things his ear and his nose, I believe.
He's a curious chap, to say the least. Oh, before we start, can I just send a big shout out to my mate Rupert in Leeds, and hopefully, mate, your back's getting better. Okay, that's that done.
Yeah, well done, Rupert. Keep taking the ointment or whatever it is.
Yeah, the ointment.
Lycanthropic fluid.
How did he put his back out?
Complaining bitterly about the state of the world. Yeah. It happens a lot. Do you know what I mean? He's a Guardian reader. What more could you expect? Do you know what I mean? His back went from reading the Guardian and complaining bitterly about things that just didn't fit into his punk rock worldview. But there you go.
They normally have this massive chip on the shoulder as well.
Yeah, well, it's not just a chip, it's a 55-pound bag of King Edwards. So, yeah, it's terrible. Terrible weight to bear. The weight of guilt. There you go. Anyway, enough of that.
Yeah, we've got loads of stuff that we could talk about, haven't we? But I suppose maybe it makes a little bit of sense to start with the cancel culture thing, which all of us have been through. More recently, Rich and myself have been through that. Rob is an old hand at that. He's very experienced at that. So
I've got the Jimmy Savile badge.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, so Rob's kind of, well, Rob feels like he's probably said everything that he needs to say on cancel culture, and clearly he doesn't give a fuck. So good for him. But yeah, it's things have really ramped up in recent years, and I think one of the things that I find fascinating, which I wanted to run past both of you, is that obviously it's been, for many years it's been a thing that if you are deemed to be so-called right wing, which I don't think any of us consider ourselves to be, but if you are deemed to be so-called right wing, then you're a bad person, right? You're a bad man. But what I find interesting in recent years is that the label of conspiracy theorist is now on par with right wing. So all of a sudden, being deemed to be a conspiracy theorist also makes you a bad guy, which I find very strange, especially when it's coming from ostensibly left-wing mouths, because conspiracy theories are kind of traditionally not necessarily tied to either right or left, but to people who are dissatisfied with the establishment in some way. So I find it fascinating that people who consider themselves anarchists or anti-establishment people have the nerve to use the term conspiracy theorist, which is, it's just a term to shut down discourse. Don't you find that fascinating?
Well, to be honest, the term conspiracy theorist, I'm sure it were CIA manufactured. In fact, James Corbett did a huge discourse on this, the origins of the term. So basically, pardon?
After JFK, that's right.
Yeah. So it's definitely, and remember, we don't call ourselves conspiracy theorists like Corbett. We call ourselves realists. We live in the real world. We can see things happening, and we're not stupid. That's the whole thing. And again, being shut down and called a conspiracy, it's like association, isn't it? It's like conspiracy theorist, Nazi. Let's use the term Nazi, because probably get blanked by YouTube box or whatever it is, strikes on it if you use
this video probably won't last very long on YouTube if I try and put it up there, to be honest. So but that's fine. We'll put it up on Odyssey and Telegram and whatever.
The problem is there's the whole lot of epithets that have been used, and they're getting tired now. They're getting worn out, and they've been overused. So they've been abused in many ways. The ways that people are described as this or that, all the rest of it. So they don't really have any relevance or any meaning anymore. So, almost by default, anybody expressing any sort of opinion which is contrary to the prevalent, let's say, left-leaning views, which we have particularly in this part of the world at the moment, anybody saying against that is automatically by default they're a far right, and they're generally speaking some kind of conspiracy theorist if they have any opinion which is outside of that norm. So the things don't mean anything anymore. And we probably had this kind of discussion before. Probably for people like myself and Rich, we would have traditionally thought ourselves as being fairly liberal, quite left-wing probably growing up, thinking you're kind of like socially focused and you kind of want the best for most people, generally speaking. But the sort of flagrant abuses of the last few years have pushed us into a field where we're considered as something else. So it's no longer relevant. The Overton window, if you like, has moved. But there's always there's a pendulum kind of going all the time where things tend to go into one extreme and then they'll reciprocally go into another extreme before hopefully they balance out in the middle somewhere. So I think language is one of the first victims of the cultural situation that we find ourselves in now. And we don't have a way of the expressions that are used, as I say, they're no longer valid. They don't really mean anything at all. I could take it upon myself to say, well, people have accused me of this, that, and all the rest of it, and I can just bounce that back now and say, yes, I probably am, and that's fine. And so, where do we go from here? Is the designation of this label designed to stop any future discourse? Is it designed to stop you in your tracks and stop you from being able to communicate anything at all? Is that what it's for? Because that's the kind of feeling I get.
Absolutely, it's like that clip I think, which I'm sure we've all seen from the 1943 Communist Party manifesto, when you want to shut down, when you want to blacken someone's name. Now, before, when we did the original Wolfshead Roundtable, and I mentioned something about, which is an old trick used in Germany to blacken someone's name, call them a Nazi, and then they're socially ostracised. But it's there on a US government information film, and it's there freely available on YouTube. 1943 Communist Manifesto. If you want to destroy someone, call them a Nazi, call them an anti-Semite, and just spread as much shit as possible. And the same tactics are being used today to shut down any form of discourse, any form of sort of like communication, and push people to peripheries. That's all they want to do. They want to destroy you because it shakes their world. They can't handle real life. That's the thing. And again, language has changed so much. Language is now loaded with like hidden meaning, and just it leaves me speechless, to be honest.
Yeah, the linguistic battlefield, really. That's what a lot of that has been perverted and changed around anyway. So things don't have the same meanings they used to have. So once you have a command of language and communication in your field, you can turn that to your own advantage. So quite right. I mean, I know exactly that film that you're talking about. And it's interesting to note that these days in present day Germany, we're having a rise of the far right, which is going to be deeply disturbing. It's so disturbing for people for what is essentially a very much a middle ground, neither left nor right party, which don't have any particularly difficult views. They're going so far out of their way that they want to actually ban them from participating in a democratic election. So I think that things like that are they're giveaways really to the desperation of people who want to entirely control the narrative, and it's not really working anymore. What I quite like to see is young German people who are rejecting the idea of racial societal guilt, shrugging that one off and saying we're actually not playing that game anymore. Because as soon as you do that, much in the same way as I've been fortunate enough to have done through various sacrifices, if you like, there is no power.
Yeah,
that's the only power they have over you is a series of names which are supposed to correspond with a series of punishments that you're supposed to go through, or mea culpas that you're supposed to perform in order for these same people to say to you, no, that's not good enough, because it's never good enough. So never apologize, ever apologize to anybody.
No.
That you mean.
Well, I could, I have probably, but like both of yourselves as well. I know a lot of German people. I've got of all of my foreign friends, I have the most in Germany, I would say, and I'm very blessed to know them. I like Germany a lot. I value my German friends, and a lot of them have similar views to what we hold, or at least they are not, kind of wildly, cripplingly censorious in how they deal with people, and but because of the nature of Germany and the history of Germany, they just cannot be open about that. And I don't know what it is about us English chaps who are, I don't know if we're just belligerent or if we're callous or careless or just throw caution to the wind or what. But German people are very kind of
more honest in that respect, in the speaker's mind.
Yeah.
And as far as Germans go, interesting point there, that they can't speak about the things that we speak about.
Well, as Rob said just before we started recording this, the initial attack on him came from a German publication, and it's been the Germans have been leading the way in attacking Rich and myself as well.
But look who these people are. They're all straight out of university. They're all fully paid up Communist Party members. Communist Party members.
Well, yeah, they're literally communists. There's a chap called Andreas Holtz who has been one of the ones leading the attacks against me in particular. He's probably listening to this at some point, and he's known. All right,
Andreas, you dickhead.
he's known to be a communist. He's quite open about it. So it doesn't come from a musical point of view. It's not people who are trying to. It's not people who are already metal fans who are trying to safeguard their scene. it's political activists who've come into the music scene who are trying to purge what they deem to be unacceptable views from it.
But they appeared fairly early on in our sort of in myself and Rich's shared sort of punk scene thing. These people were appearing back in the 80s.
Absolutely. I can remember.
Socialist worker and all that kind of stuff. They started to infiltrate into the gigs. They didn't have any interest in the music or any interest in the scene as it was then. It was totally about political social control, and they're kind of like they're an outreach of the spider, which is designated toward youth groups, because youth groups are very vulnerable toward propaganda and being messed with heavily. So that did happen within that scene, and I kind of self-retired from music for a considerable amount of time to come back from 1987 to come back into that about 2009 or so, and it was marked what the difference was, really. And you could see how far they sunk their teeth into it, and it's quite interesting, as you pointed out there, to note that there is no commonality in interest with a lot of these people between you, your music, and your outlook, and their worldview. They've superimposed themselves. They're like they're a tick and a parasite. That has always fed off youth culture and the energy of youth, much like a paedophile. So these people they're parasitic and pedophilic in nature. And it also it scrambles my mind how the hammer and sickle is not stated as a hate symbol if we're going to be playing that game, with far more of vociferous mindset behind it than anything.
Rob, get this. In some of my because I did get sucked into a couple of spats, a couple of debates online, which I don't make a habit of these days in my my more mature years. But at some point, you do get frustrated with being misrepresented everywhere, and you do feel like you just, when no one else is sticking up for you, you feel like, well, I'm going to stick up for myself then. But what's been fascinating is that the couple of times that I've had from what they would deem to be the nerve to point out that the communist ideology is responsible for more deaths than any other political ideology, even pointing that out to them is the sign of being a Nazi, because only a Nazi would say that. That's how bad it is.
Yeah, well, you're often dealing with people that they haven't really done very much research of their own. They've just dipped their toe into a convenient pool where there happen to be other people with equally rancid toes and toenail fungus dipping their toes in as well. So it's like it's a mutual collective of onanists, really, that like to sit around and circle jerk off together in order to be able to get approval. So well done, gentlemen. It's nice to have little clubs like that.
Well, they love it. It's like the epileptic mental block people. One of the main writers, he's got the hammer and sickle on his social media, and then they were putting things like, there is no bigger cause of, what did they ascribe to me, Dan? Just literally everything. I was
transphobia, everything.
A sexist, racist, homophobic, transphobic, Putinist, and the biggest purveyor of anti-Semitism in the metal scene today. So they covered every base.
But what's wrong with being sexy, man?
Nothing wrong with being sexy, Robert.
Exactly.
You are the embodiment of 80s sexiness. Do you know what I mean?
Exactly.
And the nerve of these people, these young people. I'm younger than both of you, but these people are considerably younger than me. The nerve of them to come into, and great that they've discovered a type of music, if it's genuine, that they've discovered a type of music that they like. But to come in and tell someone who's been not only listening to, but contributing to heavy metal culture and punk rock culture for, in the case of you guys, between what, 30 and 40 years? More?
More for both of us, I think. I think I'd actually say I was just thinking about this the other day. Rob, you'd be a first generation punk rocker, wouldn't you?
Pretty much, yeah.
77 for me. 79, 80.
And so for these young bucks to come in and say, no, you're doing it wrong. What you're doing is unacceptable. I mean, there's no respect there whatsoever for the existing heavy metal and punk culture, which is meant to be anti-establishment. It is not meant to be roll your sleeve up for Dr. Fauci.
I think the thing, going back to infiltration, they're pushing a political agenda, and I can think of several occasions, sort of like in early 80s, where they're trying, all RCP, Socialist Workers' Party, like Rob was saying, they'd collar us. I was stood outside local bus station about 1982, me and a couple of mates, and we'd just been out and we bought, I don't know, we probably bought some Exploited records or a Crass album or something like that. An RCP bloke collared us, and he was trying to sell us his ideology, but one of the older punk rockers saw and came over and chased him away, and they were just saying, just don't have nothing to do with them. They're parasites. They're parasites.
Like the Mormons, isn't it?
Yeah, and then
Mormons used to come around and throw donuts at us in a squat in Bristol. I say, here, guys, have some food.
Another point to make is Kronstadt uprising during the Russian Revolution, where communists massacred all sailors in Kronstadt. They were ostensibly an anarchist faction, dissatisfied with the way the revolution was going, man. So that just says everything about communism and Marxism, whatever you want to call it, ism, that I need to know. Do you know what I mean? And again, I was warned, probably 87, 88, by one of the older anarchists in Bradford, who was part of the legendary 1 in 12 club, a chap called the name of Gary Kavanagh. So he's like one of the older generation of anarchos who knew the long history that the communists had for infiltrating, and again, that parasitical nature of them, and trying to destroy everything and mould it in their own image, which is quite perverse, really. It's like grooming. So it is.
Exactly. That's
groom.
exactly.
It's groomed.
Because a lot of these would be older guys as well that were coming in.
Yes, very, very much so.
Same story with the Spanish Revolution as well. Of course, they used the anarchists up until the point where they put them against the wall and said, "Thanks very much. So you're fucking useful idiots. You always have been, you know." And people that get involved with these kind of groups, same thing. You're a useful idiot but it'll take you a while to realise that.
They're just pretty shallow. You look on, for example, some propaganda that's being put out. Let's take epileptic mental block, the classic German blog at the minute, and some of their ideas that they want to see that every metal band has a quarter of ethnic minorities in, but they're not allowed to gig until they get that quarter in, and then merchandise should come in a unitarian one size fits all, so the fat people can benefit as well. And there should be, wider door.
Come on, you're making that up.
No, I'm not. It's there on the fucking blog. These people are fucking retarded. They're really
brilliant. That's absolutely brilliant. Yeah, big jelly baby boiler suits, one side.
So it's like you name and number on.
And they got a hole at the front and the back, depending on which one you want to be today. Fucking brilliant.
Come on into the heavy metal gulags. Do you know what I mean? Absolute fucking wankers, a lot of them, to put it politely.
It'd be nice if they had a little place of their own, like Madagascar or something like that, wouldn't it? You know, you just pop them off there and say, you lot all live together because you're gonna have a lot of fun. You really are.
Amprax Island, send them there, somewhere like that.
Yeah. I mean, you can tell someone who doesn't understand communism or political ideology at all when they call themselves both a communist and an anarchist at the same time, which is really commonplace. You get bands like that band Dawn Raid, the so-called black metal band who split up recently. They would call themselves anarchists while at the same time supporting the COVID lockdowns and stuff. You know, I mean, there's a meme which I just found in my in one of my folders on my computer the other day. It's like it's like a guy like putting face like clown paint on. He begins putting it on. It's like, I'm an anti-fascist. More clown paint that supports big pharma corporations teaming up with the federal government. More clown paint to finance and distribute a product. Clown wig that is made mandatory by law. You know, it's ridiculous, isn't it? I mean, the whole idea of even beginning to call yourself an anarchist while you're supporting what's happened over the last 4 years is absurd.
Sorry, if I could ask you guys a question. Do you feel that with your, from your point of view, do you feel that there is a kind of shifting in perspective now? Do you think there's a sort of silent unease with the way that things are going, or is it becoming worse?
From where?
I mean, because you're talking about extremes. Yeah, you're talking, well, you know, with the whole music thing and the world that you interact with, because it's kind of markedly different to the one that I do these days.
We've had I think after the first recording we did a couple of years ago, I got a lot of messages from people from the older anarcho-punk community saying it was fantastic. And I won't name them because some of them have still got to go out and play gigs. But the messages of solidarity were great. We're getting a lot of messages still from people from other bands around Europe who are saying, look, we're behind you, we're just waiting for right point, waiting for the tipping point, which doesn't really help me and Dan.
It's like, thanks guys, you're out here, you're not out in public.
But, you know, me and Dan both said we're going to have to lead by example, and we'll go against the grain, and we'll do it. And we're not doing it to score credibility points. That's just who we are as people.
Yeah, we're doing it because we're doing it because we're fathers.
Yeah,
aren't we? That's both Rich and I. We've talked a lot about that. You know, and that's where it comes from first and foremost. It's not to try and seem cooler or more heavy metal than the next guy or anything like that. But I mean, you know, and I know that this goes for both of you guys as well. But you know, when 2020 happened, I knew that I wouldn't be able to look myself in the mirror as a father if I didn't take a stand at that point, because I knew what world they were trying to build that my children would have to grow up in, and that's where it comes from. And I think, you know, to answer your question, Rob, I think that I'm confident that the majority of people who think about this stuff are broadly on our wavelength, on our side. The problem is, as Rich said, is that very, very few, next to none, are willing to make that public. You know, I know a lot of prominent musicians in the metal scene who think almost exactly the same that we do, but their careers depend on them not being cancelled. So they can't bring themselves to express it.
I'll tell you a story along those sort of lines. And I did get an email from somebody recently who I've been off and on contact with for a little while now, and he was after some kind of merch from the Amebix days and stuff, and a nice guy, sort of biker and all that kind of stuff, New York punk biker, and you know, that's kind of like the people, I guess, that we kind of encouraged as a sort of thing, a punky biker kind of like a mixture of folks. But anyway, he knows the same people that I kind of know from across that part of the world, and a lot of the people that I never heard from again after I did my thing and went my own way. And he says confidentially, he said that he sends a he sends the Fyrgen, the last broadcast that we did together. He said he's been sending that around to these people who will say to him, yeah, you know, I kind of like, I get it, yeah, but yeah, they can't do that. They can't make that step to come out and say, you know, I don't think that was right. And that's that, you know, nobody's asking you to give blood or to cut off a limb or anything like that. It's just that people, if you believe something is wrong, then you're going to have to stand up at some point. You don't have to start threatening people, or you don't have to make a big noise about it. You can just say, I'm not comfortable about this, really. And, you know, give a little bit of support to people that make an effort, because, you know, if it weren't for them, there's nobody doing it. You know, it's you guys have come into that same sort of arena whereby, if not me, who else? And like, as you quite rightly say, I'm lucky enough to have a son who didn't go through that, injectables and all that kind of thing, because we had that communication open, and you guys as well, same sort of thing. You know, it's like keep communicating with your people, even when it's difficult to do so, even when it means, you know, you're going to have some problems for that, you know, socially and interactions, and in your case, with booking stuff up and being able to do what you want to do freely, because sometime it's going to break through.
Well, I think it's, for me, the frustrating thing is that it's so short-sighted. People who are saving their own skin, I mean, in some ways you can't blame them for that, because they just, you know, they find life is overwhelming enough. You know, they've got lots of responsibilities, they've got a job, and if they don't have that job, they can't pay their mortgage and everything falls apart. But if you love heavy metal and you love underground bands and you love your children, then you're only kicking the can down the road by remaining silent. At some point, those things will disappear if you don't if you don't take a stand, or at least give some backing to those who are taking a stand. You know what I mean? My Wolcensmen project struggles to get booked these days, and I know that's because, and you know, it's the same with Solstice. I know that there are a lot of festivals and bookers out there. They might not have an issue with me or Solstice or us, because we're actually very pleasant guys. We're a good laugh. We put on good shows and we play great music, but they are afraid of being associated with us. But the problem is that no one coming to our defense, and that goes for all three of us, means that you won't be able to see Wolcensmen live. You won't be able to see Solstice live. You won't be able to see Tower Cross live. I mean, I know you're not doing it anymore, Rob, but the point is that if you want those kind of bands to still exist in 5 years' time, then you're going to have to show some support. And this isn't a self-serving thing. If you want free speech heavy metal to exist, if you want a type of heavy metal to exist that isn't horribly censored to exist in 5 years' time or 10 years' time, then you're going to have to at some point come out and say, no, I stand up for the right of these bands to speak freely. So
Can I just interject a minute there, Dan? So let's go off on a tangent here, because we were talking about what we originally talked of. So let's talk very briefly, because we'll put this in some links when we publish it, about the death rates from the jab.
Yeah, no, we can move on from the censorship stuff now if we've all said everything about that.
It's all interlinked, because I'm going to go into that. The same people who are trying to censor us, they don't want to know the actual scientific or see the empirical evidence of the deaths. Mm-hmm. I'm going to say this number, and this number is there because Dr. John Campbell and other medical practitioners are going through all the data and putting it up for everybody, and it's freely available. So the amount of people who have been killed by the shot currently stands at around 16 million. 16 million. Let that fucking number sink in. And around the same vaccine injured. Now, the same people who are ostracising us, who said that it was don't forget, trust the science, follow the science, do as you're fucking told, right? The same people who said it was safe and effective. And that, so why, if it's safe and effective, a vaccine injury fund's being set up? Mm-hmm. And what's the benchmark for pulling something off the market? What was it? 15 adverse reactions? 15 as opposed to what? 15 fucking million injured. And this is just in the West. So we're going to put the links up for all this data that's there, but people want to shut down the argument because they're in some kind of like, I don't know, this is sort of like daydream.
I think the problem is they're so deeply invested in it now that it's intractable. They can't manage to claw their way back out, because they went into the whole thing, the narrative, so deeply and invested everything that they had in that. They invested their own trust and their own instincts into something which was so obviously a scam. That they know they've been tricked at some deep psychological level, and in many cases not even deep, it's just under the surface. But you start to prod that, it becomes an annoyance. They're hoping, a lot of people, that it's just going to go away, that we're never going to have to talk about this. So we haven't really yet, and this, I guess, is why you're bringing this up as part of discussion too, because they've been quite lucky that nobody's been held accountable. That nobody's been held accountable for their particularly noxious views about what should be done with the unvaccinated. All the people in the band culture that have had those embarrassing band logos on snuffly snout bloody masks, and they would have band pictures playing their instruments in rehearsals wearing masks. It's like, what happened to you people? What happened to you? Where did that link get broken in between common fucking sense and being able to use your own nous as a human being and what's going on? It was so obvious. It was that fucking obvious. Sorry, I get upset about it, but it was so obvious.
True. Yeah, it's true. It makes me fucking livid when I see it. I saw a video. I watched it, and I'm not even going to mention the name of the band, Scottish anarcho punk band. And I saw them doing a lockdown video where they were all playing wearing masks. A Scottish anarcho punk band from the 80s, and I thought, you fucking ginger tosser. And I'm thinking specifically aiming at the fucking singer here. You fucking, when has any member of the government ever told you the fucking truth? And now you believe the government. Yeah. But now there's millions, probably. I mean, this data is not even, this is right up until the end of 2023. So now we're seeing turbo cancers, we're seeing the white blood clots, we're seeing athletes still dropping dead, people dying from coincidences. Yeah. From coincidence, all these happy coincidences.
Well, this is what
the problem is. It's too late, isn't it? Sorry, Dan, go on.
No, I was just going to say, this is why you've got all these people saying, get over it. Why can't you get over it? Rich, why get over it? That was 4 years ago. Why are you still going on about COVID?
Oh, well, my point was not necessarily that. It was coming back to this thing about what happened to people. What happened to all these people that will now tell you that they have some superior ideological perspective in their life, and they have the right to tell you what is and what is not acceptable. And these same people would have said, yeah, it's perfectly all right to have people stuffed into camps if they don't take a jab. And I got called a liar on my Facebook page for the Amebix page because I said, in Australia they put people into camps. It's like, you're fucking lying. It's like, there you go. There's the link, there's the pictures, there's all the videos that you need. It's like, well, that's not the point, is it? Well, it is the point, isn't it?
Like it up them, do they? They don't like it up them.
They don't like it up them. Yeah, Mr.
In terms of the question, like, is what happened to them? Well, I don't know. Is it a spell? Is it some kind of psychological disease? I mean, it's difficult for us three to reconcile what.
It's what they call NPC, isn't it? Really, it's almost like being self-imposed, kind of like non-membership of anything at all. It's just it's a convenient slot that you put yourself into where it's nice and cozy and warm, and nothing difficult is going to be happening in your life. Nobody's going to change you, nobody's going to challenge you, and nobody's going to pull you up on your behavior because you're in the group. Well, I'm not in group anymore. I'm out of group. I'm bloody well happy to be that way too. So fuck yous.
I think at the end of the day, Rob, I don't think we were ever in the group anyway. Remember, like when we cast our minds back to that first podcast we did, and we said we've always felt like we were outsiders. So we were outside political. We were outside their, do you know what I mean? Outside their rules and standards of the box that they want to put us in.
Yeah,
I remember countless times that I've been told I'd sold out because I listened to heavy metal. I've sold out, or I'm not a real this, that, and the other because I listen to this kind of music or that kind of music, or I have this opinion. Do you know what I mean? It's bullshit. But going into another aspect of what we just talked about, why is I can let it go, but you've just got to remember how that sudden switch went literally overnight from lockdowns into Russians are the enemy. And it will literally...
It swiveled.
Suddenly, in a week, Russians were the enemy, and then the same people who were advocating killing us and putting us in camps who wanted to kill Russians. Kill the Russians! Kill the Russians! Zelensky!
They just changed their screen to I stand with Ukraine.
They put the Ukrainian...
They didn't even know where Ukraine was. They don't know anything about the history of it. They're not aware of the coup back there. They're not aware of the CIA infiltration there. They're not aware of the misuse of the government. And they've been killing people off since 2014 with the full authority of the US, and nobody cared about that. They just wanted to be jumping in now, as in, something's happened to Ukraine. This evil guy Putin is doing such and such. It's like, well, they've killed 10,000 people over in the Donbass in the last few years, and you never said anything about that because you didn't know about it, and you're still not interested in it. You're not interested in the history of a country until you get to put your little thing up on Facebook. I stand with Ukraine. Do you have?
That's the old thing. They didn't, in 2014, the Azov Battalion were Nazis. The Azov Battalion and Nazis.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And now they're the heroes of saving the Ukraine. And when you see sort of like people who this week from the government-sponsored organisation Antifa wearing Azov Battalion T-shirts, and it's just like a fucking sick joke. But where we're going, we're being funneled. We're being funneled into like a complete world of shit, because you're going from where were we going? We went from fucking the scamdemic into Ukraine, into a climate crisis, and now, in my mind, we're being sort of like, most people, they're taking their eye off the ball because of the latest series of crises that are happening. Do you know what I mean? Wildfires in there, and Trump being re-elected, and rape gangs and things like this. And really,
sorry, Richard. Do you guys think that one of the problems that because I'm starting to think this way myself, that one of the problems we have is overstimulation. Time seems to be going really quickly at the moment. It's like 2024. Literally, that would seem to be yesterday. It's gone, bang. It just went. It all compressed into nothing at all. Now here we are, and I'm putting January 25 onto things that I'm writing or whatever. Everything seems to be speeding up, and part of that seems to be because of the access to information, and we're spreading ourselves increasingly thin. So we're seeing a ton of stuff all the time, sensory overload, and the tendency is to invest your energy in this and that. Like you say, California wildfires. It's like guilty of drones over military bases. All this kind of stuff. Something's happening all the time. So it used to be once every 6 months or so you pick up the paper and go, oh, that's a thing there. That's quite interesting.
Yeah, what paper you were reading. If you were reading Sunday Sport, no, not at all. You'd be looking at something.
They're quite interesting.
I've got an answer for you there, Rob. I'm pretty sure I know exactly why this is happening. It's because everything that's going on is about Ordo Ab Chao, order from chaos. Right? It's all about creating as much chaos as possible so that they can pluck from that their new order, right? That's what they're working towards. But that only works if everyone's aware of the chaos. Because if you're sitting there, it's like I watched, I don't know if you've ever seen that YouTuber, Peter Santinello. He's like a travel log YouTuber. He goes around and visits places in the world. It's a great channel. And he was in California, and he was interviewing this painter in Northern California who was saying, this was right before the US election, and this painter, great like old stock American guy, great painter living out in rural Northern California. He said, look at those clouds up there. They don't care about the US election in a few days. They're the same as they were, 1,000 years ago, the same as they're going to be in 1,000 years. And that kind of attitude is not manipulable. That kind of man who doesn't pay attention to the chaos going on in the world is impervious to the chaos and therefore to the order which will arise out of it. So I think that's why we are being deliberately overloaded with stimulation, and every current thing has to be forced in front of our faces, because if we're not aware of the chaos, then we won't accept the new order that they present afterwards.
The solution. Yeah.
It's almost like a relief. You're being tortured.
Yeah.
Being tortured, and you're waiting for it. You're waiting for some calm. It's very, very. It's a very, very evil way of doing things. But it's true, because behind the scenes, it's almost like a lot of this stuff. It's a distraction of what's really going on. You're taking your eye off the ball. I think it's like when we were talking when I mentioned Project Bluebeam with the drones and everything else. Well, that's just a distraction, because really what's going on, they might be testing energy beam weapons and all these rumours are like Amazon doing drone deliveries. That's military tech. You've seen the robotics that they're coming up with. And we all know about 15-minute cities and everything else. And all this is going to get implemented, but at some point, if they can get away with it. But one thing to take out with, sorry, I'm going off on a tangent here, is at a grassroots level, in sort of like, let's just say ordinary people are pushing back hard. That's another reason why everything's speeding up, why we're seeing so much chaos. I mean ordinary people. I mean your man who runs fish and chip shop, or your guy who's emptying your bins. He's very aware now of what's going on. He's very, very aware. That
this is coming back to what I was saying earlier on, which is that question about how much is on a broader scale, how much has our society changed? And it was almost as though the whole pandemic that we went through gave away the plot a bit too quickly to a lot of people. So the people that did see, or that, that are in retrospect, they're starting to notice. There's people within my family and stuff like that would say, I don't feel well, I haven't felt well since whatever, So you say, well, I tried to tell you, but it doesn't make any difference. We're kind of like, it's spilt milk, isn't it? It's like, it's been done. What can we do to help people that are in trouble now? How can we keep people's spirits up, and how can we get them to say, all right, next time, watch out, let's try and pull people together and focus on that. But I'm going off tangent again myself now. I don't know where the hell I was going. The drone thing. Yeah, well, that was quite interesting.
Very interesting. Very, very interesting. But it were all pulled from Project Bluebeam, from what I read.
I know about the Project Bluebeam thing, but I just couldn't see that as working in these days, particularly now we got AI and like everything's manipulable. So
but the whole point being, you get all these books from 60s and 70s saying, there's going to be this, and this. So what's to say that the CIA or whoever, Davos, saying, well, let's implement part of that, and then it'll avert everybody's eyes and it'll confuse everybody. It's a smoke screen.
It's smoke screens,
What Dan says, exactly. This is why they're causing the chaos. And eventually people are just going to want to say, look, enough is enough. Let's just sit down and have some calm. And then that new world order will be implemented.
That's right, yeah.
You won't have free speech. And again, I'm going to sort of like leap off on a tangent here with what Dan said. If you want,
sorry, Rich, just to really interject there, that's because they'll say things like, "Well, free speech contributed to the chaos, so we if we don't have free speech anymore, then we can have peace and order." Sorry, go on.
That's it. As free speech rights are being curtailed. And we could go off into that German from that website who said, Rich Walker habitually steps over the line of free speech. Wait a minute. What you've just said is contradictory in itself. Free speech is free speech. It's an absolute. You can't change it just to suit your political agenda, you fucking moron.
Yeah, I'd say that Arbeit macht free speech.
Well, free speech makes you free, does it not? No, that's work. Sorry.
Works exactly. Arbeit.
But I've lost.
You talk about we were sort of on Bluebeam and the drones thing, and
but I were going somewhere else.
Sorry, Rich. Tripped me up again.
My bad. You were saying about the the chaos and how they're going to bring in the new world order to relieve people, and then you were going to go somewhere from there.
Yeah,
dialectic.
It's kind of like everybody's fucking sick of it. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. In particular, I've just watched something this morning. Chap who I like, Neil Oliver. I think Neil Oliver's a very, very articulate man, and he gets to the point, and he says it with passion. Do you know what I mean? And everything that he's saying that's happening over here in England or in the whole of the United Kingdom, it's happening Europe-wide. It's happening in Germany. It's happening in France. It's happening in Holland. It's happening in Belgium, in Sweden. Perhaps not so much in Denmark. It's happening in Italy. It's happening in Greece. But the things that are changing so rapidly, and again, I'll say it again, on a, let's call it street level, so the punks can understand what we're talking about. On a street level, people are pissed off, but they're going to get so pissed off that they'll accept any solution.
Yeah. They've started to notice the demographic changes.
Yeah, things like that. And it's not always beneficial. We could go off on a little bit of history where we're talking about when the original sort of like immigrants came in from Jamaica and West Indies, it benefited UK because you had a cultural change that sort of like instigated sort of like punk and heavy metal.
Debatably, but you know,
I'm a firm believer in that, to be honest.
Oh yeah, well, simultaneous with that, you think because people like to say that was all it was a problem with we didn't have enough workforce, but simultaneously we were telling British people to emigrate to Australia for jobs over there. So we kind of like we drained off a lot of our workforce and we brought in people. So I mean, there's something to be argued there that yes, we did get some cultural benefits from that, music wise, and perhaps a few other ways as well. And to be fair as well, I think that the broadly speaking, the Caribbean population that came in the 50s and 60s and onwards have integrated to a pretty good degree within our society.
Same with a lot of first generation Indians and Pakistanis.
Yeah,
they integrated very, very well. You look back at historical footage and interviews with them, and they're just normal families and they're normal people. Do you know what I mean?
Normal aspirations, but all of these people are. You know, I mean, I'm not going to demonize one demographic over another. But it's not about the people themselves. It's about the sheer numbers and about the way that actually changes the nature of your society. Because we've been pushed to one side in favour of the economy, as they like to put it. You know, so all they're looking for is work units, and they're basically what it is. It's creating a new slave class, which is not called that and never will be called that. But that's exactly what it is. Because the one thing rolls from another, which means that the more people you have competing for shit jobs, the less you can pay them, and it goes downward and downward and downward. So you end up with people with real skills getting less money in their pocket to be able to prop up an economy which has collapsed in real time anyway. But they can fiddle around with the figures, saying, "Look, everybody's in work." It's like, well, yeah, everybody's in 2 or 3 bloody jobs just to get by because of what you've done to this country. And the argument that they always make is that we have an increasingly elderly population, which is going to need some care and looking afterwards. But, you know, you look at the people that are going to be caring and looking after, and they're forging their documents and they have got no real world skills to be doing this stuff at all. It's just it's a scam to be able to get into who can blame them, getting into a free place, getting free money and getting looked after over the priorities of the indigenous people. It's like you can't get a hospital appointment over a guy that's come across in a dinghy because he's riddled with fucking AIDS. You know,
I saw it when I first came back from Germany. I did literally 6 months homeless again, and so our combination staying at Dan's or sleeping in my car for like 6 months. But on the times when I were back in my home area, it was snowing, I had to book myself into a hotel, and I couldn't get into a hotel because it was full. And on the nights I was in, I saw the people who were in there were laughing about the brand new iPhones and the money they were getting and the drugs they were able to buy. And I'm just thinking, wow, this is like a real eye opener. Oh, the reason they're there for money and iPhones? What the fuck? Do you know what I mean?
It's a kick in the teeth, isn't it?
Yeah, it is, especially when I know people like NHS workers who are living in slum dwellings with black mould all over walls and just told that there's no housing for them or anything like that, people with kids. I'm just going to go off on another leap back to something that Dan mentioned, which is we're going off on like another facet what we've been talking about, which is like really, really interesting. And it's like the digital currencies and things. But we were talking about if you want to see bands like us, or if you just want to see bands full stop that are not state sanctioned and have your free speech curtailed, I think every punk and every metal band needs to stand up and act like a fucking man, because I can see where we're being funneled into, and it's that digital technocracy. What does that mean for underground bands, right? So I'm going to lay this on fucking line to you, and I've been saying this for years, what a digital currency for me means. We exist as an underground scene, punk and metal, we exist like a black market. When small bands go on tour, we take cash for merchandise sales, and we don't pay tax because this is how we survive when we're out gigging in the back of a transit van or whatever. No one takes cash. When you've got a digital currency, the government will know. They'll take a percentage of your earnings. They'll tax you to the fucking hilt. You won't be able to go on tour anymore. And when that digital currency's stopped, they can stop you from going on tour. And they can switch everything off and you're fucked. So you're not going on tour anymore. Listeners, if you're playing a punk or underground metal band, if you don't stand up and fight, you're not going on tour anymore. And it will happen unless you resist it. And that's what it means to be in an underground band. It's like, we live in an alternative lifestyle.
Yeah, so, here in Britain, where we don't get state funding for music, we're not like Norway, where a band like Enslaved literally get a grant from the Norwegian government to go and tour because they are bringing Norwegian culture to the world, and that's true, by the way. That actually happened. That doesn't happen here. We're not like Belgium, where the local council pays for new venues to have the latest gear and like nice plush backstage areas and whatnot, or gives local promoters a subsidy to bring bands in to play. You know, in Britain we don't have any of that. So as Rich says, we have to rely on these kind of loopholes.
We've always exploited. It's been going on since the late 70s. All the way onwards, that whole culture of what we do, it's like a black market. It's how you survive when you go on the road. You live on cash sales. So do you really want, let's just use him as an example, Keir Starmer or Bojo or anybody else taking a percentage of your money and then throwing it down drain or siphoning that money off to some new climate change cause, Ed Miliband. Fucking juggy bastard, or whatever. You know, that's what it is. It'll just mean the end of the underground. And I've been saying this for 5 years. This is what digital currencies and the incoming attempt at implementing a technocracy is going to mean. It's going to mean the end of your underground bands. That's what it's going to mean. And when we got the Chinese style social credit system. We can always rant on about that. But that's another aspect of it. That's what it means when you're a bad boy and you say something that's offensive, offensive to Citizen X who lives 5,000 miles away, you know what I mean, in a commune that services, I don't know, non-binary goats or whatever, you know.
There is an inevitability to it, though, isn't there? That's the problem. You know, it's like, because the existing paradigm, the financial system that's been played out for so many years, it's been in default for a long time now, and it's just been propped up with various kind of like initiatives to stop people from seeing the sleight of hand that's going on all the time. So it's not sustainable. So there's something else has to come about. Now, unfortunately, we can't go back to gold and silver. That would be pretty good. If you just had, silver and copper coins and silver and all the rest of the stuff that we used to use that way, it would make trade internationally pretty difficult. But I don't know what's going to happen, but something is going to happen, isn't it? Either, as you say, the Ordo Ab Chao thing of the solution being that it can all be taken care of with UBI, so everybody has the universal basic income. And Dan and I, we briefly talked about this in a phone call that we had the other day, which was about looking back on that film, what was it, Zeitgeist, when that came out, and how at the time I thought, well, this is radical, this is new, this is exciting. What they're doing is they're showing you the state of the world as it is at the moment. Have you seen the film, Rich?
No.
Okay, it was it used to be. It was a sort of undergroundy thing that went around when people were still doing CD-ROMs. So you get a copy of this film, and the film was like saying, "Look at the mess the world's in since 9/11, blah de blah. Look, everything's fallen to pieces." And then it's about an hour and a half, and at the end of it, it has this sort of like futuristic collage of ideas about flying cars and beautiful cities, like the 15-minute city stuff and things like that. And I started to think about that recently, how that in itself, I think that was seeding these ideas within us culturally anyway, because back then I thought, yeah, that looks good. But my realization now is like, that they're not actually talking about ideas that are going to be available for the common man, because we're going to have to get out of the picture soon. They're going to have to find a way of getting rid of us, like they've already have tried several times.
Yeah.
This stuff, all of the infrastructure that's being put together at the moment, people are saying, well, you know, you can put wind farms all over Skye, and it's still not going to do this, and it's not going to matter at some point, because they're not going to be servicing 8 billion people.
I can flesh this out a little bit for you, Rob, because I've just looked it up and I know exactly what you're talking about, because I saw Zeitgeist. I saw both Zeitgeist films when it came out, because there was Zeitgeist and then Zeitgeist Addendum. Was that right?
Yeah.
Something like that.
That's right.
And it was at the end, I think, of Zeitgeist Addendum where they introduced the Venus Project. And this is what you're talking about here. This is this futuristic kind of Star Trek style society that a man called Jacques Fresco thought up. Now, Jacques Fresco died in 2017. He was an American futurist. He grew up in a Sephardi Jewish household, and a self-described social engineer.
Yeah.
So this Sephardi Jewish futurist social engineer was being heavily promoted by the Zeitgeist documentary for his ideas for a futurist society.
Well, nice one. I didn't look into that, but that's interesting information, because that all filters into exactly what we're talking about, which is the manipulation of these ideas for it's basically giving a sort of false hope to humanity. If we all work together, we can come to this utopian, because they were saying things like, you don't need to worry about deliveries because things are going to be delivered by drone. You know, it's like, you don't need to worry about a job because your job's going to be taken over by robots, but that's going to be fine because you're going to be living a new luxurious life through this social credit system. So everything's going to get easier for you as a citizen. And isn't it wonderful? And this great promise of the future. And that's what increasingly people have been buying into through these various initiatives that we're seeing instigated around the world. But my point is, like, it's not for you. It's like, they're putting all this stuff in place now. Same as coming back to this the drone thing over in the US. I mean, I maintain that what they're doing is they're just working out flight routes and logistical problems for the upcoming network, which is like everything does get delivered by drone, medical aid or surveillance, your goodies, your shopping and all that kind of thing too. That is their vision, which they outlaid back then, and which we thought was, which I thought at the time was quite an exciting vision of the future, but it ain't. It's a prison. For the prison, it's a prison for the people that don't make it to the top of that triangle, and for the other ones, it's going to be absolutely wonderful. You know, it's going to be, yeah, it will be a utopia for them, and it'll be a living hell for other people.
Yeah, because
with no meaning in life. We live to work, in a sense. You know, it's like we don't live to slave, but creativity and the work ethic is something which is maybe more particular here in the West. But for me, my identity as a man, and also as a provider, but also as a man within a society, is doing stuff, making stuff, realizing
being a craftsman,
growing that society. And you see the difference between that attitude, which we've fostered and we've cultured through millennia, over people from other areas of the world who come across and just sit on their ass and say, I just want to consume. Yeah. So that's a cultural problem that we're going to have in the future.
We've already got that problem. We've had that problem for a long, long time, and it's very prevalent all across Western Europe now, where kids are brought up to like just be lazy bastards. Come on, PlayStation, fucking YouTube, Facebook, all your social media. You've got that dim-witted fucking woman who's just slept with 100 blokes, and another dimwit went on and slept with 1,000 blokes, and this is it. And it's all about the optics and like having your 5 minutes of fame, and kids can't do it. But again, that glorious future's not for us, because our particular, let's just say, cultural, what's the word I'm looking for? Just trying not to make it sound like I'm some kind of like white supremacist or something like that. Let's just say like our culture is gradually being sort of like eroded and diluted and
undermined.
Not so much undermined, we're just being killed off. And, you know, this has been going on for like 50 plus years. And I think that's a lot of it's, I'm going off on a tangent here again. And this is not just England, this is all like Western culture, and this is including in America. We've been used as like slave racers. They're killing us off like with bad nutrition, do you know what I mean? And then when the heavy industries goes, they put everybody into ghettos and kill off those communities by flooding them with drugs and alcohol, cheap alcohol, all the white cider and shit like that.
Plastics, Teflon, non-stick pans, vaccines, like everything. Yeah,
but there is a word to describe this. It's called tikkun olam, which is healing the nations, which is helping those that aren't able to help themselves because they're just mere animals, and being able to oversee a project whereby those people will be brought into the light and their little shards of goodness will be brought back into the whole, and the world will be made whole again. So you have a project, an ongoing project that's been there for hundreds of years, if not thousands of years, which is not for us. It's for other people altogether. We're unfortunately the people that are we're
expendable.
The needs.
Say that again, Rob.
We're surplus to their needs, really.
Yeah, expendable. We're expendable. That's what we become a slave race, and they're gradually killing us off. That's it. But it's not just happening to. I mean, all across Western culture, because it's black and white communities that are suffering from all this shit. Do you know what I mean? It's not just, again, to stress the point that we don't want to come across as sort of like white supremacists or anything like that. So we've got to be honest. It's happening all across the West, and the West now encompasses many, many different sort of like people racially. Are we allowed
I don't know any white supremacists, do you?
No, I think they all died out. Something like the traditional idea of white supremacy, or the white supremacists, only exists in the BBC's collective hive mind. You know,
well, it's a projection of Jewish supremacy.
Yeah.
Oh, right. Okay. Well, that's something new. Yeah, possibly.
Yeah, in my mind, and completely my own views on that. It's a projection. It's saying other people that feel themselves superior to you, so they create a bogeyman on the other side, which is the gun-toting AR-15 200-pound fat boy in the south of the United States. You know, these figments of people's imagination that is not really there. It's a bogeyman which is supposed to be frightening people off. There might be a few people waving flags and this, that, and the rest of it, but they're not a threat to anybody. You know, there's nothing going to happen from that. This isn't the real thing.
No, it also depends on how you define supremacy. You know, I mean, plonk me in the middle of the Congo, and I am far from superior. Yeah. But at the same time, put a man from the Congo into the Scottish Islands, and it depends how you define that. In what way? In terms of how able they are to survive, in terms of the connection they have to the landscape and the culture, in terms of how they relate to the people of that area. You know, these are all different ways that you can define so-called supremacy, and they're very clever at always changing the perspective on that word so that it fits the situation. You know, if someone were to say, well, you know, my ancestors built this country, there, you know, this whole idea of privilege. Well, I think that, you know, Pakistanis should have privilege in Pakistan. I think that the Chinese should have privilege in China. I think that the Scottish people should have privilege in Scotland. I think that the Irish people should have privilege in Ireland. As I've always said, my biggest crime has been applying that very same logic to my own people. Yeah,
exactly, quite right. Again, this thing, supremacy, it's like that's a hubris and an arrogance which isn't natural to us as people, because if we're quite honest about ourselves and we look around, particularly, it's almost like our Achilles heel is our kindness and our willingness to take in people that are in need, and to be able to share what we have. And traditionally, this kind of the whole Celtic society was based around giving and receiving, you know, and being able to show through how much you give, how much you have. You know, it's like it wasn't. You empty out your coffers to say, you know, I'm only enriched by other people. So we've been taken advantage of in that respect, and the very goodness that we have culturally has been used as a weapon against us by people that want rid of us.
Mm-hmm.
Why do they want rid of us? That's the whole thing.
They see us as traditional enemies.
It's curious because when we're going on about like right wing, there's been all this, like, let's call it right wing fear porn on BBC, and then at the same time, and I sent you this yesterday, Dan, we're going into like the rape gang problem. The very next day, over the past couple of weeks, we're saying, like, yeah, there's huge right-wing activity in UK. Is the fuck? There's no fucking Nazi organisations over here. There's no right-wing organisations whatsoever. It's just a few stragglers and nutters left lying around from fucking 80s. Yet, in direct relation to rape gangs, they've come up with some new government propaganda and an illustration of potential grooming gangs. And it's like seeding people's minds. So the illustration they put up, all the rape gangs were white. They're talking about Pakistani rape gangs, but they want to put it into people's minds that, you know, you must have imagined there were Pakistani rape gangs. Do you know?
Yeah.
They must have fucking imagined it.
But they use these abuse adverts on TV as well. It's the same thing. It's a young white guy that's going to be the problem. You know?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, it's, you know, that question of why do they want to get rid of us? Well, you know, like Rob said, this idea of historical enemies. Well, there is this concept in the Bible of Amalek.
Yeah.
Right, which I'm sure Rob is very familiar with. And, you know, people will say, oh, you know, when the Jewish people talk about Amalek as their enemy, they're talking about historical enemies. They're talking about, you know, whoever was the enemy at the time, etc. But there is something which disproves that, which is that at The Hague in the Netherlands, there is a plaque which says, "Remember what Amalek has done to you. Do not forget." Mm-hmm. Quite clearly, that refers to the Germans, and probably anyone in Europe who, you know, might have been deemed to be facilitating that. So, to a certain section of humanity, Amalek is the German people, and well, what do you want to do to someone who you believe to be your eternal enemy? Well, you want to get rid of them.
The biblical solution is to kill all the men, the women, and the children, and to kill their animals, and to destroy and to raise their lands. And interestingly enough, Amalek was the name that Bibi used to describe the Palestinians in their most recent confrontations. So it's an interchangeable glyph that they use as to describe the nations, and it's all of us, really. It's all of us that are on the outside, our enemies, and it doesn't matter what color you are. It's just shades of enemy, really. The most potent enemy are the ones that have stood up, and particularly in the last 80 to 90 years, those that have made a stand for one reason or another and pointed out that they do have a societal problem, and that problem is that they've invited in a parasitical entity which is starting to gut them out from the inside, and that there's very little they can do about that without inviting reciprocation from other people in sympathy. And that's the way of it. I think that we're going to have a new view on history at some point. I really do hope where we'll be able to find out why things were done, what was really done, and what wasn't done, and why people felt a certain way. Because I did a podcast earlier on, and I have to have a mention for this guy. Matt Bushranger was the first guy that I did a talk with, and he says to say hi to you guys, and he says White Horse Hill and to Solar Thane is the best songs ever in the world. So he's sending compliments to you, Stews.
Oh, great, thanks, mate.
Yes. So chatting about that kind of stuff. I've completely lost my bloody my thread on that, but Amalek.
What? I think we were asking the question. Who, why, what, where? Oh, yeah. Now what, when? You know, the usual kind of questions. I've lost my thread. Can I suggest we take a break for 5 minutes? Can we pause recording?
Yeah, well, I'll just keep. Yeah, I'll pause it actually. Yeah, here we go. Okay.
Hello, we're back again.
We're back. Yeah.
Richard's
I was thinking into glue.
Just been making some comments about the remark that I made to Dan recently that Islam is the broom of Judaism, which is to say that there's an endless desire to foment some kind of confrontation between the West and anybody else that can be seen as the tough guys. So at the moment in the UK, we're facing this reality. In my mind, I don't know whether you guys agree with this or not, that Islam is the bogeyman that's being used, and we're supposed to have a confrontation at some point. They failed to do that with the civil rights movement in the US. They tried to their best, and they still have been trying up until very recently to be able to promote the idea about black against white. But unfortunately, we tend to get on quite well together these days. Maybe we did at one point. So that's off the table. So now it's the old religious divide, and I think the hope is that we basically wipe one another out. So it's basically there's a third party that watches onto the conflict.
Amalek versus Amalek, right?
Yeah.
So if the Palestinians are Amalek and the Europeans are Amalek, then
we are the nations. That's the thing.
It's very it's definitely what I've been feeling watching some propaganda that's been coming out recently. Someone's trying to stoke a race war, or a religious war.
Yeah,
that's it. And every time I look, it's like going back. You're looking straight back at political Zionism that's trying to instigate this, in my mind. And whether I'm being simplifying it, I don't know. It just seems that we're in a very precarious and dangerous point, because there's been several flashpoints over the past 6 months. You've got an indigenous population that's been marginalised over here, and we're getting shat on. Do you know what I mean? In working class communities all over the UK, all over Scotland, England, Ireland. The same thing's happening in the Republic of Ireland. And it's basically, like I said, the people are being forced out of the Middle East and out of Africa. They're being forced over here. But curiously enough, Neil Oliver addressed that the same people who've exploited all these areas, they're now forcing them over here, and they're going to exploit us and destroy our culture as well, just as they've done to these people.
Yeah. I don't think it's not the stated intention of the people that are coming over here that they're going to destroy a culture. It's just that they're bringing the third world with them. So, you import the third world, you become the third world. And you look around any high street now, shitholes everywhere. The same thing. It's vape shops and a charity and a Starbucks. Same model, absolutely. Ever. There's no character to any city centres. Everything's just going downhill into this sort of mulch of stuff. And it's not the fault of people. It's just that they haven't lived in the same kind of way that we have, that we've been lucky enough to be honest. So I don't blame people from other cultures, and I think there's something to be said for dialogue with Islam as well. Funnily enough, because I do think that we're seeing demonization of that as in an overall sense, where it needn't be that way. The thing that's being used against us is this fear that they're going to take over. And unfortunately, I can't see that they're not. So it's almost like we're going to need to negotiate terms.
I don't know about negotiate. I don't think anybody's trying to take anybody over. It's just what's happening.
I mean, demographically, numbers,
Oh, yeah, well, I mean, you've got a cultural clash. You've got all these young guys coming in where, let's be honest about it, with... if you've been watching news, they're hanging around primary schools and things like that, we're not allowed to mention it, because if you do, you're a racist. Do you know what I mean? What? I mean, it's like the left-wing politicians are trying to silence all this. I mean, what are they? What? This is not left-wing. This is bullshit.
We have to be really careful about this stuff, though, don't we? Because I know exactly what any of our detractors watching this. I know exactly what they're going to say to this. Their response will be, you are buying into right-wing propaganda. They'll say, you've been reading too much Daily Mail, you've been watching too much GB News, I personally don't pay attention to any of those outlets whatsoever. But they actually kind of have a point, these people, because, you know, if we're talking about this idea of fomenting some kind of conflict between the Islamic population and the indigenous population, well, the media is obviously going to be playing a part in that. And I think that some of the things that we do here, you know, I saw a news thing earlier about Afghanis in I can't remember which town, like somewhere in the north of England, I think, being given, or maybe it was Bristol, something like that, being given £1,000 for driving lessons. You know, something like this. I don't know whether that's true or not, but I do know that it stokes or fans the flames of this tension, this desired tension between the two camps. So we do have to be careful not to make sure that what we are what we're saying, what we're accusing immigrant populations of is actually true. But at the same time, we can all see it. We see it with our own eyes. So there are certain things that we know are happening.
We're not
sorry, Rich, go on.
Populations. We're not accusing immigrant population. We're accusing the government.
Yeah,
we're accusing the government of stoking a race war.
Yeah, and also to come back to that point about GB News and the rest of it, and this kind of like typical conflation with the right or the far right or whatever. People like ourselves, I like to think, are quite aware that there's a three-way game going on here. So I'm looking at people like Tommy Robinson, knowing damn well that he's not here for British people.
No.
But what he's using is all the rhetoric that inflames these ideas themselves. So he's basically a useful idiot that's taking along people with very good intentions and flaring them up into life with these ideas. So he's part of the problem. I'm not saying that he does. I'm not saying that the things that he says are wrong, because of course with a lot of these principles, if there's an element of truth within at the core, then you can get away with a lot of things. You can put across a whole agenda as long as there's a part of that people recognise. So you use that as the springboard for whatever happens next. But I don't know whether he's going to be standing around. I think there's already a rift appearing between the I guess the traditional right-thinking people here and that kind of, you see it in the Reform UK, Tommy kind of fallout stuff. So they're precariously trying to balance these things whilst it's also doing damage to both parties at the same time, you know?
It's all managed theatre though, Rob. All theatre. It's all a distraction, because actually we know what's going on, what the ultimate end game is for Agenda 2030 or anything like that, and also get rid of loads of us or whatever. We're seeing, like, with death rates from jabs, people dying, blah blah blah. All fear propaganda constantly coming up. We started off with COVID, and then we went on with monkeypox, and now it's bird flu. Next week it's going to be fucking dog boils or something like that, and everything.
So to address that though, Rich, we'd have to say, what is the solution to this? Because these are things that are not going away, and we know damn well that they're being used as a political theatre. So we need to come up with new solutions about this, and it's not you place one party against another, but we have to say, realistically speaking, there are challenges that we face culturally now, which we've never had before, and which have been superimposed onto us without any of our consent. Now, the easiest thing for us to do is to blame the other. So, I mean, that's where the Tommy lot will go straight to, but you notice that what he'll do is he'll take everybody else along with him. So he'll take the he'll take the black population along, and he'll take the Indians, he'll take the Sikhs, and he'll take everybody like that, apart from the one demographic. It's like, what's the point here? It's to pick out one thing and say that's the enemy on the behalf of whoever it is that's been paying him, which we know damn well who that is.
Of course, but this is what people do all the time. It's like you've got to have an enemy to get people to rally round to fight against. And in the meantime, it's just theatre, it's distraction. It's distraction. You don't really see what's going on.
Speaking about distraction, I think I think one of the problems that we got as a society as well is there's not enough female impersonators anymore.
Oh, well, I think, are we going into transhumanism here? Are we going into the transhumanism?
It's just that,
transmanism.
The old Kenny Everett, You know,
Kenny, yeah. Les Dawson. Les Dawson.
Yeah, Les Dawson. Dick Emery.
Dick Emery, yeah.
He was funny, wasn't he? Dick Emery, he was brilliant.
You are awful.
You are awful, but I like you. Yeah, because there was something which was really funny about seeing really ugly men dressed up as women, and I think that's a great tradition that that we need to keep going in this culture. You know, we should have them at the front of, I don't know, of organisations and maybe bands and stuff like that too. It would be wonderful, wouldn't it? Really.
Curiously enough, now I'd noticed because we watched Matt Walsh's film.
Am I racist?
No, I watched it. It's pretty funny, but his previous one, What is a Woman?
Oh yeah.
And then he just twigged that really weird woman who works for Planned Parenthood, the one who can never answer the questions, look like she's in some sort of trance. Mm-hmm. And then I only realised that she worked for Planned Parenthood. And then Planned Parenthood has got its origins in the original eugenicists.
Yes.
Curiously enough. But there you go. And who else has got their family links to the eugenicists? Oh, Bill Gates and Klaus Schwab.
Yeah.
And then, but what happens suddenly if you get all these Western nations and you become genderless sex slaves to the elite?
Yeah,
that's all you're going to be. You're going to be either a sex slave or you're going to be a work slave, and stay in your 15-minute cities and whatever. But
So what's it used to be funny? The old Kenny Everett thing is getting a bit serious now, isn't it?
Cupid stunt.
I made a post on my Fyrgen Telegram channel recently where I said that I was talking about Trump and Trump's election and everything, and I said that the danger of Trump is that he is opinions of the American establishment and the Western establishment are probably at an all-time low at the moment. Nobody engages with any of the institutions, the elections, the meet. No one buys into any of it. But if you put a very popular man like Trump in, then all of a sudden it gives the whole thing more legitimacy. But what I said in that post was that I think that things like the whole trans agenda is actually a gambit. I think that they are going to sacrifice that quite willingly, because I think this is going to be another example of look how chaotic society has become. Institutions have been allowing children to have drugs and operations to become a different gender and whatever. Look how insane things have become. Let's bring some sanity back to this, and then in come people like Trump. And I think that what's going to follow behind people like Trump, and this is a point I wanted to make a little bit earlier, is the Noahide. Yeah. So Rob, you talked about Tikkun Olam. Is it Tikkun Olam?
Tikkun Olam, I guess.
Tikkun Olam, yeah.
Somebody will correct us on that.
So
Noahide laws as being the basis for us, the nations, because we're the nons. So they need to be things that we ascribe to, and there are So you and I were talking about this the other day, and my level 10 paranoia outlook on that, and how that can be used against us as at the end of the day. And we already see the formation of that coming about, don't we? Through the ADL and all that kind of stuff at the base level, but also through this some of the legislation going through in the States. So you're making people protected and being able to say anti whatever is a protected class. So go on, sorry.
Yeah, well, the Noahide, for people who don't know, it's the 7 Noahide laws are: do not worship idols, do not curse God, do not commit murder, do not commit adultery or sexual immorality, do not steal, do not eat flesh torn from a living animal, establish courts of justice. So most of those things are obvious, to the European mind, that those are natural inbuilt morals to a lot of us, like flesh torn from a living animal. I mean, we don't tend to do that. Even those of us who eat meat, we tend to kill the animal first, right? We want courts of justice, things like this. But what we're seeing is some of those laws have been deliberately flouted. Things like sexual immorality, things like courts of justice being undermined and subverted. And this is all part of the chaos, I think, which they will fix using the Noahide. They'll say, look, And I don't. They probably won't call it. They probably won't introduce it as the Noahide. They probably won't say, "Here you go, people of the world, follow these Noahide laws." But I think that is what they are working towards, is a Noahide society, because according to their own scripture, that is when the Moshiach, the Messiah, will return, once everyone is adhering to these laws. So they need to make it happen, and I think that's what's happening. I don't know what you think about that.
As I say, these kind of like level 6 to 10 paranoias for me would be the implementation of Noahide law as the one world religion, if you like, as a set of tenets that have to be applied all over. And as you're probably aware, the panel for idolatry, which all Christians are considered idolaters by Jews, is the separation of the head from the body, which is execution by guillotine or by sword. And my step into the dark was with that was to imagine a time where the one world project had come to some kind of fruition, and the projected center of the world, the axis mundi, was what always proposed by these people, which is Jerusalem. And if the middle of the world is Jerusalem, then they would set up a world court there, and that world court doesn't have to be an expansive building. It can merely be an AI, which can focus on us as individuals through all of the data that we've given them since the internet started, and hoover it back through and find out those who've been guilty of thought crimes and who've gone against this particular thing, and sentence you. And you wouldn't have any appeal process whatsoever, particularly if you had these Noahide laws as being the principles that you need to adhere to. So there's a possible dark future, and I hope that doesn't happen.
It's almost like, many religions have this idea of being judged upon death, right? When you cross that threshold, then whether it's the Egyptian religion, and I can't remember which god, I don't know if it's Anubis or another god, who the weighing of the heart ritual and all this. Yeah, maybe it's that. Yeah, the Sekhmet. Yeah, the weighing of the heart, where they basically judge your entire lifespan to see whether you are worthy to go to the duat, or to heaven or wherever. But it's almost like they've kind of brought that forward, and they, according to your theory, they might be able to judge someone's entire life whilst they're still alive, based upon your internet history. So it's not just you were a bad man on that day because you assaulted that person. And therefore you will do your time for that. It's right, we're going to judge you as a whole from the very beginning until the current time. We're going to judge whether you are worthy of life.
Isn't that you've got a really good point there, because it's almost like we always see this imitation. So there's never a new and creative idea.
Archontic almost, isn't it?
Archontic, exactly. Yeah. That idea about that's exactly what you're talking about there. It's like having a living version of the life review that you supposedly go through once you do an NDE, a near-death experience or that kind of thing, whereby you're shown everything that you've ever done, and uniquely in that atmosphere, you're supposed to be the judge of yourself in a sense. You say, well, yeah, shit, I was a bit bad, I could have been better. But in this representation of it, in this world, you will be judged by others and you will be sentenced by others. And I guess the sentence is death. So, well,
well, that's a jolly. That's really cheered me up. I'm going to switch light out and go back into gloom. I'll be like a fucking mushroom.
I reckon live while we can, guys.
Yeah. It's curious because
the whole thing about the saturation of the internet with all these ideas and scenarios and stuff, and what we can do is this look at the clouds, look at that, and that's not going to change. And you can listen to the birds, and you go and watch the grass grow, and say these are the only realities here.
If you were asking for a solution, and my solution, really, at the end of the day, is kind of like disengage from social media and disengage from interacting with fucking idiots like Cupid Stunt from Band X, because these people aren't worth our time. I'm not saying they're beneath us or anything like that. The human beings, or they're being sadly misled, or that they're so self-obsessed. Just not engage in any of that. But curious when you're talking about justice and we're talking about AI. So, like, the right to trial by jury has gradually been eroded over here in England, which is going to have some very, very deep ramifications, especially with all this AI shit which is going on. Now, first, on one hand, I did want to talk briefly about AI and art, and whatever that art might be, whether it be music, literature, or do you know what I mean? Art itself, drawing, crayons, do you know what I mean? Scratch. You remember when you used to? This is going off on a like this is kind of a 70s thing. Sorry.
Can you see what it is yet, mate?
No. We're not allowed to mention. Not allowed to mention him. He's in bed with Keir Starmer
now. Right at this very moment.
Very, very likely. Jimmy Savile, Rolf Harris, Keir Starmer,
Lord Ali, Keir Starmer. Massive four-way dick-sucking competition.
Yeah. They've got, who is it? One at Chuckle Brothers from Nuremberg in there as well, probably. What were I going to say? Yeah.
Sorry.
AI. Very curious. Social media and everything else has been flooded anyway for the past 6 months. But in the past few months, YouTube is absolutely flooded with AI music. And for the first time ever, now one of my passions is I like a lot of kind of like weird sort of like late 60s garage sort of like rock, or just obscure stuff from late 60s, early 70s. Yeah. A band cropped up, and because I've got it on autoplay, because I don't pay for streaming services, I just let things just turn up and see what this music's going to sound like. And something had me fooled. It sounded that authentic. And then I went looking for the band's history, and then I looked through the comments and I found, this is AI.
Yeah.
This is AI. And I found that so fucking frightening, because that's kind of like the end of human creativity.
I did the same thing as you the other day. I clicked on one of these ones. It's like a Motown act doing So what they basically replace the titles with rude stuff or whatever, or it's a bit of fun, but the professionalism of it, that's the problem, isn't it? So what they've managed to do is they've synthesized the songwriting process and said, make me a song like such and such. So, in principle, you could say, write me a song in the style of Solstice, using the lyrics in the style of Amebix, with a such and such, and something will come back for you.
Yeah. It's terrifying, because there's nothing really to aspire to as humanity if everything's going to be done by AI. And that's now we're going to start to degenerate, because everybody's just going to want the art made by AI because they can get it done for free. They don't need to go look for creative people to not so much to entertain them, but to inspire them, because it's all be done by AI. It's all.
I'll tell you what. There's a point to that, and you can say, that is true. For some things, I think that there's not going to be any replacement. But speaking personally, for what I do, like as a swordsmith, I have seen I've seen mass production, which is like the old style of AI, if you like. So I've seen that on the one hand, and I've seen people that are prepared to spend money on something which has an intrinsic value which you can't really define. So what that is authenticity, and it all comes back to that. So I think that whilst you can mimic very, very closely through AI, you cannot mimic authenticity and truth. So as long as we have the aerials, man, still intact, like the ones that told us don't take the jab, that's where you can tell what is true and what's not. A lot of people are going to fall for it because they don't have that stuff in place, or they haven't developed that stuff, that function of being being able to discernment.
Yeah. You see, it's looking for authenticity and looking for something that's real and that you've got a connection to. Whoever's created it's got a connection to it. They've put their heart and soul into it.
You can tell.
It's very I'm not going to say demoralising. It's very unnerving to see how close all this shit's mimicking the human thought process and the human creative process. And people like the things, they've got the attention spans of goldfish. And they also like the path of least resistance. We already know that. So, you know, that's why most of them sort of like crumbled. And I say most of them, I don't even think most of them did. I think probably only a third of the world's population got bullied into taking the clot shot. So
let me put something else to you. There'll be another Rich Walker out there soon.
Yeah, I hope so.
Because that's all it needs to do is to scoop up the available data on you, and they will replicate you. So you will. It's almost like you could have an online personality, which is enacting your life for all intents and purposes online without being you. Yeah, you could disappear. It's like, you know, somebody could come and bump you off tomorrow, and you could still have something replicating you online. That's how false the whole future is going to be, and that's why I think we fell into a great hole when we fell into the internet. Yeah, and almost like I pray for an EMP. Blow the whole fucking thing out of the water, because we survived in the 80s and 90s without any of that shit. Yeah, you know, you dump your stamps and write to each other and all that kind of stuff.
Drink cheap cider.
Yeah, I do not mind going back there. And there's part of me that I'm trying to assess now how good things have come from the internet. It's like, yeah, sure, we got in touch with other people throughout the world, but you know, from my own experience, 99.9% of those turned out to be twats anyway. Yeah. There was nothing to them, so it's all facsimiles. My
answer to that, when people say, "Oh, what about all the great things that the internet or technology has done?" My answer to that is that the internet has only solved problems of its own making. That's my belief. So, for example, when you say, "Yeah, you've met great people and you've forged connections with people over the internet," well, the internet stole real life community in the first place. So if we hadn't had the internet, we would have simply got together. We would have got together around a campfire or down the pub or at gigs or whatever, and we would have had that connection anyway. The internet only gave us back what it had already taken from us, plus a load of other shit which we've now had to deal with, and problems like, you know, Rob has posited there, where if you interact with the world primarily through the internet, then yes, you can be replaced by AI quite easily. And if all of your friends are online and they never actually meet you in real life, then you may as well disappear and they'll never know.
Yeah, they'll never know. No. Yeah, quite right. It's funny, isn't it? Like we are those old men shaking their hands at the cloud now. Yeah. Because we've gone through that. But I don't mind that. I'll put my hand up to it and say, yeah. And I also put up my hand and say, I made a great mistake in getting involved with this. And it's a shame, you know. It was very seductive, but all of these things are. You know, it's nice for us to be able to sit around here and talk on a phone, which would have been something from Star Trek back in the 60s. We couldn't imagine it was actually going to be a living thing that we could grab hold of, you know.
2 bean tins and a length of string.
That should have been enough for us, mate. You know?
That's it. That's the whole thing. It's just very seductive.
It's seductive, yeah. And we fell for it, but I think that you know, if there were a solution, it would be to turn that switch off. Yeah. And then what, you wouldn't be hit by the immediacy of stuff, because it'll take 3 weeks by bloody donkey or pigeon for the news to get to you. Yeah. And you go, oh well, whatever.
Signal fire, things like that.
Yeah.
Well, this is why I've been, you know, to the ire of many people, I should imagine. This is why I've been promoting people abandon smartphones, because I've never adopted a smartphone use. I don't have a smartphone. I had one for a very short period of time, which I used to keep in my desk drawer in my office, purely so that I could use WhatsApp for a period of time. But that was only for, I think, a year or something that I had that, and I no longer. That was an extremely old iPhone. Other than that, I've never had a smartphone, and that makes me invulnerable to a lot of the aspects of the New World Order. I'm not saying that, you know, it solves everything. Well, actually, I kind of am, because if you think about it, if everyone threw their smartphone away, how could this digital society progress? You know, without QR codes, without apps, without you know, vaccine proof of vaccine tests that people show on their phones, without all of these things, what they're trying to usher us into, this new digital society, AI and everything, it simply wouldn't be possible. The problem is, yeah, I mean, but the problem is, you can only make that decision for yourself, you know, and unless some kind of heavy-handed dictator comes in and outright bans, you know, smartphones, the only way it can happen is through each individual's personal choice. You know, a Luddite like me, and I'm not ashamed to call myself a Luddite, because this whole idea of progress for progress's sake, I think, is retarded, frankly. You know, why have we never questioned every step of technology as it's progressed along the way? Why is it always deemed to be automatically acceptable? Well, not just acceptable, but desirable. So yeah, I am a Luddite and I don't have a smartphone. I've made that choice for myself, but the problem is making, you know, the other 99.9% of humanity make that same decision.
But you're coming around in a full circle here, aren't you? Back to this same conversation. It's like, you're the person that's doing it. Where's the other ones? Come on, you're not.
Yeah, but the thing is, Dan, what Dan's saying is, let's just put it in another, look at it in a different light. You're saying, like, basically a non-violent resistance. So in effect, you are heavy metal Gandhi.
Yes, heavy metal Gandhi. Yay! Yeah, but that's, I mean, I guess we do work our way toward kind of looking at a possible solution to that, which is gradually unplugging and unhooking from something.
Absolutely. I mean, what Dan said, I've got a knackered old iPhone. When that goes, I won't buy another one.
Yeah.
That's it. And I got rid of apps and everything off it. I don't have any messaging app on it, and I just use my laptop now. And I'm just not interested. And the more I disengage from the internet and the bullshittery of the internet, the happier I become. I'm just not interested, because it's just people posting pictures of fucking cats sat in plates of pasta, or pictures of themselves gurning, looking like Les Dawson in the middle of some, I don't know, Les Dawson with constipation, giving the sign of the horns.
Yeah,
because that's what it's all about, sign of the horns. You know, fucking wankers.
Yeah, it's a shame. But yeah, I think we're getting to the nub of the problem, aren't we, really?
The internet.
And it's the distraction as well, isn't it? You know, I in another one of these, this travel log guy, Peter Santinello. You know, and this is one of the great things about the internet. You know, I can visit a community in rural Northern California via YouTube. You know, this is great. But one of the guys that he visited made a really interesting point. He said, back in the day, you know, talking kind of the 70s, he said you could tell which houses had a television and which ones didn't by the state of the property, because you could see that the people who were distracted by television weren't keeping up with the maintenance and the repairs of the property and the lawn outside and you know, the fencing and everything like that. And I think that we've entered that era kind of on steroids in the modern era, where no one is getting anything meaningful done anymore. Yeah. Because and I don't preclude myself from this. You know, I may not have a smartphone, but I have the internet and I use it a fair bit. And that steals a lot of time away from real creation, real creativity, from writing music, lyrics, from just doing general upkeep on the house or upkeep on relationships, real life relationships.
The other aspect of that, Dan, is when everybody gets on the internet, it's like this worldwide game of one-upmanship where everybody's trying to outdo each other and to be seen to be part of whatever social circle. So you've got to be seen to, you know, I'm in this, I've drunk 500 beers, blah, blah, blah. I'm listening to this band. There's a picture of you gurning with Billy Bollocks from fucking Manowar or whatever, or touching Steve Harris's kneecap. Do you know what I mean? Outside a gig in fucking Clacton-on-Sea or wherever it might be. But it's like this ongoing game of one-upmanship. Look at me, look at me. It's just fucking... And it does distract you from being sort of like creative and actually forging real meaningful relationships and interactions with other human beings, because you're too busy playing up to your fucking audience on internet. And that's it. That's what it is. It's just like we used to call television, the idiot lantern in the 70s, but now the idiot lantern's the internet.
It's in your hand. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's in your hand. And and ironically enough, it's all in your hands as well. So what can we do? Yeah.
We had a power cut the other day because we, with this storm Eowyn, which is an interesting name, isn't it? That's a Lord of the Rings thing. But we had a power cut, and I don't know about you two, but I love power cuts. I mean, they were a lot more common when I was a kid, and they're probably even more common when you two were kids. But they don't happen so often these days. But even my children get excited now with the power cut because it's a change to the mundane kind of routine of life. And I can't help thinking that there's some kind of, I don't know, some kind of messaging from the divine, whatever you deem the divine to be, that almost says, yeah, you feel good when there's a power cut because that's how you're actually meant to live. And I said, I don't make any apologies or secrets to the fact that I do think that we would be a lot happier if we didn't have this level of high technology that we have today.
Yeah, throw it in fucking bin. Next time, when whatever it is, Hurricane Higgins happens, have they done one called Higgins yet?
I don't think they have.
When Hurricane Higgins hits, I've been waiting to do that joke since you started. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. I've been like desperately internally getting really anxious to make Hurricane Higgins joke.
I think we have to explain that for the listeners who are even younger than me, that Hurricane Higgins was the nickname of a very famous snooker player.
Yeah, I'm showing my age now. Yeah, bring back Ray Reardon, Dracula. We're degenerating a bit. Yeah, but going back, getting rid of tech, it's really, really important. It's like the same again with AI, getting rid of all this tech, all this smart technology, throw it away. But also the other aspect of it, which worries me, is its capability to monitor you and listen to your conversations, like with smartphones and smartwatches, and how they can be turned into, knowing every aspect of your life. And I know if they want to, they could hack into your computer through your internet connection or whatever. But when you're out in nature, do you know what I mean? Do you really, really need to post on Instagram that second that you're on the top of fucking Isen Torr or something? Or do you have to share every cough and fart with the entire world?
No. Yeah. Well, my wife and I went to been away on holiday a couple of times where you suddenly realise, well, I don't have a phone, I don't have a means of being able to get a picture here or whatever. And you go, well, okay, just take the picture in your mind, and that should be enough. We don't have to have this constant record of stuff, which is basically filtering our experiences through a third medium, which is so you're no longer having the experience. If you're standing at a gig with your camera in the air trying to record the concert, you're not there.
I've literally gotten virtually no pictures of gigs from 80s because we were living the experience. Yeah. I've still got it in my head. All those pints of cider, stage dive.
Well, that's an interesting idea, isn't it? They say if you don't use it, you lose it. So the introduction of cameras, it used to be once upon a time that only the very wealthy could afford a camera. And then, I remember when I was a kid, only my rich friends' dads had a camcorder and things like this. And now every single person's got an advanced video camera in their pocket at all times. Could it be that we're actually losing the ability to remember things photographically because we have these devices which have replaced that ability?
I think what you're losing is the ability to live the moment because you're too busy taking a fucking picture for social media.
That's one thing. Yeah.
I think that what the point Dan's making, which I get from that, is that imaginatively we can't work so well anymore. And I think there's a really good point to that. I didn't know whether it's just me being an old man now and getting on a bit, but I find it more difficult to construct pictures in my head, like magically and stuff like that, which you should be able to. You should be able to see, I see a red door in a garden or whatever in front of you. You should be able to have an imaginative process of visualizations and stuff. It's more difficult now.
Yeah, and that reminds me of something, because this whole thing about NPCs, they say that only 25% of people can actually think visually, can actually picture things in their mind, and the kind of suggestion of this, but the insinuation of this is that, you know, throughout time, only 25% of humans have a real, like consciousness, a real fully developed consciousness, and the other 75% are kind of these NPCs. But what if once upon a time every single human had the ability to visualize things clearly, but that a certain portion of humanity have lost that because of the rise of technology?
I think that's a good point, and I think a lot of things indicate that as well. In that we're starting to relearn stuff on that subtle. I think a lot of it has been through the use of entheogens and stuff like that. More recently, you know, where people are contacting abilities as well as other realms of reality, but they're also awakening stuff within themselves. So there's an awareness that we're missing a component. We're not managing to bridge the hemispheres between the left and right of the brain, which we would have had more instinctively in the past, because we had to be aware spatially of our immediate environment, as well as the ability to be creative inside that environment too. So you need to be able to visualize what you were going to do, as well as to be able to say everything is right within my immediate as well. Yeah, so you'd have heightened sense of both imagination and normal stimuli too.
Yeah, we've got really philosophical there, haven't we?
Well, I guess we have. We've gone into a bit of a side road there, but
I think we're at about 2 hours now of recording. I'm happy to, if either of you have any points that you've wanted to make that we've not got to yet, then I'm happy to carry on. But if not, we can call this one done.
I'll just say that when it comes to like being creative and things like that, and the influence, only sort of like 25% of people might still have that ability, but I see it anyway in lyrically, because when people start rhyming ice with ice, then I think you're really scraping the bottom of the barrel, and you're just looking on internet for things to write. What rhymes with ice? What rhymes with?
I don't think there are any serious bands that have done that.
No, surely no one will have rhymed ice with ice.
This sounds like a little joke that we're having here, doesn't it?
Wait, never mind that, Rob. We just want you to stop hatred and transphobia, okay?
Yeah. Okay, Personally, I'm going to take that on as being a to-do in the coming year. But, from my point of view, lovely speaking with you guys again, but also I think that what's important to emphasize with this, and I think it's pretty bloody obvious, that there's none of us three here are full of hatred or an irrational fear or hate of other people or all the rest of it. We're just exploring ideas fearlessly, because there is nothing to fear, but also hoping that there's other people who get a little bit of inspiration from listening to folk that don't mind sticking their head above the parapet a bit, you know, and like gently does it if you need to feel comfortable about it, one step at a time, little baby folk. But do something with the life, because you've only got this one. This is your chance. Make something of it. Live it properly as well as you can do, you know. And these are serious things that we're talking about and that we need to consider, as well as the tomfoolery. We like to fuck around, but we also, there's a seriousness which is earnest, you know. So thanks for having us on, Dan. Good to see you again, Rich. And Solstice, blessings upon you boys. It's really good to see like-minded people together in a unit of brotherhood and understanding. And may your travels take you where they need to go.
Did I just see an Elon Musk?
An Elon. There we go. The full Elon.
Oh dear me. Well, he was swimming with one arm. Swimming with one arm.
The old Zen adage.
Yeah, it's been great.
What's sound swimming?
Yeah, we'll have to do it again in another year's time. I'm sure we'll find things to rant about. But
I'm sure there'll be lots of people pick this all apart and they'll find out the minutiae.
Oh God, I'm really glad. Again, I've never known people who are less hateful than us. who can show understanding and empathy and consideration for others around us. And we're not sort of like anybody's political soldier. We're just we're not even on the peripheries. We're outside of the box, totally thinking for ourselves, trying to do our own thing, trying to be creative and trying to look after the people who we care about and who we love. And we said this a week or so ago, Dan, that we were approaching it from a position of actually love and understanding and caring about people, not with any malignant intentions.
No, I've never named someone. I've never picked out someone's name in a way that could be construed as bullying, unless they've done it to me first. So for example, we mentioned earlier Andreas Holz, this German communist who's been out to try and sully my name, and Rich's as well. Now, I would never ever mention his name were it not for the fact that he drew first blood. And there's another individual which we've not named in this discussion yet, but I'm sure he'll be listening. Actually, all three of us are aware of. Now, again, Rich and I are being accused of bullying this individual, but actually, they drew first blood. Again, we don't like you two, but none of us have got any hatred. I mean, you're two of the nicest guys that I've ever met. Rob mentioned earlier how we're deliberately trying to look for ways to avoid some kind of race war. We don't want to see anything like that happen, and we get misrepresented as being, in favor of this kind of thing. But we don't want violence, and we're not blaming immigrants or trans people or anything like this for what's going on. We're pointing our fingers at the people who are orchestrating, who are engineering this whole situation. Mm-hmm. So,
and also, and the people that they're using as useful pawns and tools, and just saying, "Wake up! You're being used in a lot of ways." To
try and get through to these people, they've got a lot of them. They've got very overinflated opinions of themselves, and they seem to think that the world revolves around them. That they actually are the most important thing in the world, which, of course, they are to them, but not to everybody else. But they're trying to mold the world around them and their opinions, and they can't handle anything that sort of challenges that opinion, because they're not very mature as adults, really.
Not secure at all.
Yeah, it's very, very insecure. It's very unmanly. Very unmanly. Dressing up as Cupid's stunt is very unmanly. There you go. Am I allowed to say that? Oh, hang on a minute. Yeah. Have I sworn much this time?
Yeah, a couple. Yeah. That's fine. I think I kicked us off with an F-bomb.
Oh, there you go. I like to turn the air blue with a barrage of expletives. So, as you do.
I think I said before the last podcast that we did, it's I think it's the last of the summer wine of punk metal, really.
Yeah, let's not go there. Let's not go there, because before you know it, we'll all
exactly in combo it, don't we?
We'll be going down a hill in a bathtub before you know it. That's quite sad. Okay, thanks not being compo.
Well, there you go. Too late.
That's your place, Rob. You're going to be compo of punk.
I only have very vague memories of Last of the Summer Wine, unfortunately.
That's probably the best. You blocked it out, I can say. Right, all right, let's wrap this up, chaps.
Okay, yeah, great. No, excellent to speak to you both.